I'm delighted to have Todd Babiak with me today. Todd is an accomplished author, journalist, and branding expert who is leading the charge of Brand Tasmania, and he's currently their outgoing chief executive officer. With his extensive experience in storytelling and place branding, Todd has been instrumental in shaping Tasmania's unique identity on the global stage. His vision of the quiet pursuit of the extraordinary perfectly captures the spirit of this remarkable island. Todd, thank you for joining me today. It is an honor to have you.
It's an honor to speak to you, Akhil, and for your interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I read somewhere, I think it was said by Scott Bradbury, that a great brand is a story that's never completely told. You have spent much of your career shaping and telling powerful stories, especially for the last 6 years, I believe, in Tasmania. How do you see Tasmania's story evolving? And if you'd like to shed some light, that what role does Brand Tasmania play in it?
Well, I think historically people have thought that when you're building a brand for a company or for a product or for a place, that people go off into a workshop and they get creative and they come up with something, and then they download it on that product or on that place or on that. And what we try to do instead, and what I've learned to do mostly through failing and figuring out a better way, is to just really listen deeply and patiently, so that whether it's the organization, the company, the product, or in this case, people, we understand as much as we can about them and what they want, what they feel, and how they understand Tasmania and Tasmanianness evolving over time. So I suppose the way you evolve a brand is you just carefully, curiously, patiently, and respectfully watch, and more importantly, listen. And the changes come through instinct if you listen enough. And people will just tell you, ultimately, example after example, this is what feels different. This is where we can go. This is what I think is most special about this place. Rather than try to download something, you listen, you distill, and then you turn that into a really consistent and powerful strategy.
That's quite remarkable. I believe you talked to a number of people. So I'm just preponing this question, as you mentioned about speaking to people. How big was the exercise when you spoke to so many Tasmanians, and what database? I mean, this might be an industry secret, but did you made an Excel sheet, or that was a Word file? That how do you compile so many responses, and how that trickled down into one fine line or a lot of concepts where you said that the Tasmania never prefers money over meaning. So what was that procedure of or the methodology? How do you record it?
Well, I suppose what we did in the first instance, and this is what my company had done previously, I was here as a consultant. And when Tasmania was curious about going through this process, I told them, I think the best way to do this, what I've found is to do as many one-on-one interviews as we can, using a broad cross section of the community. So we spoke to, my first job, we spoke to 200 people, a small team. And then when we expanded beyond Greater Hobart to all of Tasmania, we did another 200 interviews. And then once we had compiled all of the data, deep qualitative data, into hundreds of thousands of words, and then it was just a process of reading, discussing, distilling to make sure we distilled it as far as we could without missing any of the essential truth. And then understanding too that there's a global competition around this sort of thing. What is uniquely Tasmanian? So let's say a bunch of people told us, well, I think Tasmania is really innovative. Some people just say that. When you ask them for examples, maybe that isn't actually what they were trying to say. What they were sort of trying to say is, we've been isolated a long time, and we had to make our own solutions for so long that I think that's created a culture of inventiveness. And they might give us 5 examples. So it's closer to that. So that's what we really tried to do, is to make sure that the themes that we were hearing from people again and again, those consistent themes, could be boiled down, distilled down, almost like a reduction down to a page. And you look at it, you read it, and you work with your team to say, have we missed anything? Have we missed anything crucial here? No, I think we have it all. No, we did miss something. So you iterate, I suppose, get to that page. Everyone seems quite happy with it. There's a dominant theme. And then now distill further to half a page, distill to a paragraph, distill even if you can to a line. and not a marketing line. You mentioned the quiet pursuit of the extraordinary. We never intended for that to be a marketing line in any traditional way. It is a platform, a way for us to remember almost every theme and to tell this Tasmanian story.
Wonderful. I will come back to that if you don't mind, but you might have mentioned thousands of times, but I would also like to know that how did you end up in Tasmania? I know that you are from Canada. So what you knew Tasmania before landing over here or before taking the charge of it, or what was the story behind yourself coming down under?
To Tasmania. Well, I'd done this kind of work in a bunch of different places. So this company, Story Engine, I worked for, we started doing this work with banks, universities, startups, mostly in California and those sorts of places, and then cities. So cities became a real passion of mine. We would try to use the same methodology, but it was so complicated in cities,
Yeah,
places, because people are complicated. So I loved that work. I loved the complication of it. And I did more and more of it. And we ended up having clients in North America. And then I did some work in the UK, and we were in Africa. And then happily, one day I heard from someone in Tasmania, the government of Tasmania at the time. And they were interested in the approach I had taken with a city I'd worked for and lived in, Edmonton, which had done well. And so they thought, we're kind of a bit of an isolated place. We're a bit underestimated ourselves. We think there's something, the approach you took, we really like it. Could we talk? And that ended up with me coming over to Tasmania as a consultant to help to replicate the process we'd used in other places. And you asked if I'd heard of it. I knew nothing really about Tasmania. I knew the spinning Tasmanian devil from the Warner Brothers, but I'm ashamed to admit that I was a bit fuzzy between Tasmania and Tanzania. I was
okay,
that ignorant. I knew nothing. And so it was a
yeah,
delight to research it, to get excited about going to this beautiful new place I'd never been. I'd never even been to Australia. And so
okay,
I landed, of course, well, as you're landing into Tasmania from the big island of Australia,
yeah,
the
yeah,
just the magical beauty of the place immediately conjured you. So I was really excited to land in such a beautiful place, and then to get to work immediately trying to do 5 interviews a day, setting up the process and
yeah.
just speak to people, just listen to them. I'm not speaking, I'm listening, but hearing their answers, hearing their responses to our questions, it was really consistent and powerful, and I really loved it.
Wonderful. So I would like to share my feeling about Tasmania because I haven't been there. I've been to Australia. Is that it is a place with a bluish tinge over its mountains and having a great Ballery Oval where the cricket is played in Pakistan and very close matches over there. So, as an immigrant aspirant from Pakistan, I am trying to go through the websites of almost all the states, be it New South Wales, Victoria, Northern Australia. Only I think in one of them, Victoria had that share of the personal stories of the immigrants who landed over there on those states. But in Migration Tasmania, I clearly noticed that there were a number of stories which highlighted the life of those who have landed over there and built a life for themselves. So, was there a conscious effort? I'm not sure if you have gone through that website or not, but was there a conscious effort, or did Brand Tasmania have an impact on Migration Tasmania? So they included those stories in their websites.
Our model, what we're trying to do is to have, and it's in our legislation, so that the tourism story, the trade story, the story for student
Yeah,
attraction, the story for investment attraction, and then maybe most importantly, talent attraction is unified. This is one special place. It's not for everyone. And we do find, the more
yeah,
research we do, we find if you choose a Tasmanian product or a Tasmanian vacation or the University of Tasmania to study, you may be the sort of person, we call them ambitious introverts who love nature. You may be the sort of person to come here and migrate to Tasmania as well.
yeah,
And we also know from what we learned, what I learned previously and what we've been doing here, is individual storytelling, where you can see yourself reflected in someone to see, I see myself in that person's story is the best way to share kind of a universal story of a place and a pitch. So what we've tried to do is in our own storytelling, and then the storytelling we do with our partners, whether it's Migration Tasmania or Trade Tasmania or tourism or the University of Tasmania, is just to narrow a little bit as far as we can into the kinds of people for whom Tasmania is for. And
Yeah.
they're out there. Maybe you're one of them, Akil. I hope you are. For some
Yeah.
people, it's exactly what they're looking for. And so what we've tried to do, an example around that, ambitious introverts who love nature, when we go to a country and we're trying to recruit health workers, we know that if we just put up the ad and show someone in a pink or a blue surgical costume and a stethoscope, we're going to look like everyone else. So what we've done instead is we've tried to show people who are attracted to the culture and lifestyle of Tasmania, people who might like to ride their bicycles, might like to walk on the beach in the cool, crisp air, walking their dog, or they might like to go on a weekend adventure into the forest and do some bushwalking, to show that this place can solve a culture, a lifestyle issue for you that you're looking for. Maybe you've been in Karachi for years and years, and you're just desperate for some clean air, some space, beautiful trees, the rain dropping from a leaf. This is actually what we're trying to do. Is we know that it's a hard thing to do, to get someone to move across the world to live in a new place, to leave everything comfortable behind. So we have to really show individuals who've done this before and have had their lives transformed meaningfully, individual after individual after individual. And you mentioned earlier the meaning over money thing. That's just it's a theme that came up so much with Tasmanians. So many people will take a pay cut to come to Tasmania because the riches here are in what happens to you in your life. It's not so much, I'm going to come to Tasmania because I'm going to make so much more money. You come to Tasmania because you're going to find wealth and value in other things. You're not going to be poor, but we won't be able to maybe compete against the big cities on salary. But what we can compete on and outperform in globally is the kind of lifestyle you can have here.
Wonderful. So I would also like you to please shed some light on the awards you won in London. I think that was the Odd Job campaign, which you might have a role to play in. So how was that experience, Tasmania winning those awards?
In 2021, we won the City Nation Place, which is sort of the number one, I guess, economic development, place branding, place marketing forum in the world. They have a global gathering every year. We won Place Brand of the Year in 2021, which really was special for us because we're nerds. We love economic development and place branding, and almost everyone who does this work globally goes to that. And to be recognized by peers who were the judges was really special for us. And then, yes, this last year, with Tourism Tasmania winning the Odd Jobs campaign, which taps into that story of, Tasmania is not for everyone, but there are some opportunities here you can't find anywhere else. So using in a pretty clever way, PR and the normal ways you'd find a job like LinkedIn, that you can have these unusual careers like a wombat walker, which are not real, but it's a way for you to think about, I suppose, the Tasmanian story. And then the other award we won was for the youth story work we did. We did 198 interviews with Tasmanians between 18 to 24 to find out, okay, what's the story they're telling? What would they like Tasmania to be in the future? And this engagement has led to some very clear actions, and we're trying to build a Tasmania that young people feel they have a hand in. Tasmania being, for example, a workshop for climate action, which is something the University of Tasmania really holds on to, as well as a Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. There's many, many small businesses here, and those are different opportunities than the large ones. So going through that youth work was really special for us, and then we were recognized for it in London. So that's really special.
Excellent. So you have been living over there for about 6 years, and now I believe you are now moving to mainland. So what is that one place which you like the most over there in Tasmania, which you like to spend time with your family or your have some time with yourself, I would like to know that. But which is that one place which calls you the most?
I suppose the experience I think about a lot. I mean, there's so many places in Tasmania, but
Mhm.
we, as a family, did the Three Capes track. It's a multi-day
Okay.
hike in the south of the state in the Tasman Peninsula. Just loved that. The walking through the different kinds of forests and landscapes, and then being along these rugged, intensely beautiful coastlines, and then even the historical aspect, whether it was Tasmanian Aboriginal history and storytelling, or the people who first to arrive from Europe, who saw this special
Yeah.
place for the first time, and all the terrible and crazy stories from that era. It really brought it all together. And for the first time, I'm going to do the overland track in January, so I'm excited to try that. Maybe I'll change my answer after that. But so much of Tasmania is being alone with the people you love in a very special place, knowing there aren't many places like this left in the world, and just being present, savoring it, and understanding that this this place has way more value than we could ever communicate.
Excellent. There seems to be quite a lot of places. So definitely, I also look forward to that. You have been an advocate of taking sabbatical during a busy career. So how good is Tasmania for sabbatical seekers?
I think Tasmania is ideal for creative thinkers, and I think a
Yeah.
sabbatical is an opportunity to shut off from your busy life and to think
Yeah.
creatively about what's next for you. And I think Tasmania is perfect for that. It is a place of reflection. Nature helps with reflection. It is a quieter, calmer culture, and it's an artisanal culture. It's a culture of high value entrepreneurship. So you're constantly inspired by people who've taken big risks and tried new things based on their passions and talents. So for all those reasons, I think it's an ideal place for a sabbatical. Apart from the delicious food and drink and landscapes that you can look out every window at.
Wonderful. I believe you spent a very interesting time of your life in France. So you missed living in France, and this Tasmanian scent, does France have an impact on launching this campaign? That this is very unique. I think this is hardly I see in anywhere else in the world. So does France have an impact on that?
I think about our time in France a lot. My children were little. That was a sabbatical year for me, and it was that time in France that gave me the idea for Story Engine, the company. So I do think I tend to operate in these
Mhm.
7-year cycles, and I've come to the end of one here. If I think back to when I
Yeah.
started as a consultant, so uh, and then the sabbatical, the whole idea for that came from every 7 years you're supposed to let the land lie fallow and go off and study the Torah, and God will grant you a miracle. I like that idea as well. But the person we worked with, we first came up with the idea of the Tasmanian scent because so many people will say, and Akil, you will find this: you land at the airport, and
Yeah.
you don't have an air bridge. So the door opens, you're hit with Tasmanian fresh, clean air immediately. And so many people spoke about
Okay.
that in our interviews. So we thought, what if that could
Okay.
continue into the airport? And so we tried to find someone to help us with that. We couldn't. And then finally we found someone, another one of these passionate people who had moved to Tasmania. His name is Craig Andrade, and he is a perfumer
Okay.
who had been previously a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, who then studied in France, in Grasse, the top place to study perfuming in the world. So yes, in France, and he'd done all of his holidays there for some time as he was transitioning from the legal profession into the perfuming profession. He chose Tasmania to come live, to build his new business, and so we're very happy to have him here. He worked with us on the Tasmanian scent. He went around the state in a camper van, smelled everything, and came up with a beautiful story
Okay.
and a beautiful scent based on all these uniquely Tasmanian botanicals. And that has been in only 3.5 months, it's already profitable. So we're able to actually, by selling it, feedback into the Tasmanian budget. So it's very good.
Excellent. I not only the Tasmanian scent, but I also believe that this Tasmanian brand you have started putting on your partners' products. So how is that working through with your partners, and how do you see that it will take Tasmania's products into mainland or the rest of the world? So how is that evolving with you?
When you're in Australia, you might see, or overseas when you're buying Australian, you might see there's a kangaroo logo called Australian made,
Yeah.
and it follows a strict set of rules and regulations about what can and cannot be Australian and certified as Australian. So certified through provenance, where it comes from. So we have followed some of the same rules with our Tasmanian mark. The idea is this is truly Tasmanian. We've gone through the process of working with these companies, and now over 160 of them are using the Tasmanian mark. But it's not just provenance, it's also the storytelling side. So there's more than I made it in Tasmania. It's I made it in Tasmania because of my connection to this place, or because I think this was the best place to do it, or because there's something in the water or in the air or in this landscape, or because I think of this as an unusually inventive and artistic place, and that's why I built this here. Or it's a great place to launch a tech company. Whatever it might be, we help our partners use the Tasmanian mark as a platform for their own brand storytelling, and then to wrap their products and their company in the Tasmanian brand as well.
Excellent. So I also believe that you have been talking a lot about how to tell a story. I also do cricket commentary over here in Pakistan. So whenever we talk about a good commentator, they always talk about telling stories in a perfect or near to perfect way possible. So have you evolved your definition of telling a good story over the last 10 or 15 years? Or what would be the best definition of a good story for you to tell with this? Or what are a few words to describe a good story? I mean, I know that this is something other than the Tasmanian aspect, but I would like to take the advantage of you being with
You sure? Well, the nice thing about storytelling, I think a good story not only keeps our attention, it stays in our brains. We can't forget it. It uses our five senses. It's magical. We're not there. We're not that cricket player, but somehow it feels like we
you.
are when someone tells us a good story. And so this very human technology, we might as well use it. And I suppose the great thing about storytelling is every 8-year-old knows exactly how to tell a story. You begin with a
Yeah,
problem state, then something happens, a decision is made. There's always choices and changes. Someone makes a choice,
yeah,
and then sometimes it's a happy line toward success. Sometimes it's a happy line that looks like success and it ends up being failure. But it's always about choices and changes, very particular ones in a particular setting. And so I think that the nice thing about narrative, the more you study it, you can read hundreds of books about narrative, but it all just comes down to there was a problem, someone made a choice to solve that problem, and either they were successful or they were not, but definitely they were transformed. And the place was transformed. And we were transformed
yeah.
through them by listening and learning about their story. And so I think that's what I try to remember. And you can, of course, as you know, use storytelling to build personality, character, to create heroes and villains, make people laugh, make people cry, because it is the direct tap into our emotions, into our hearts. And that's why it's at the heart of video games and novels and cricket commentary and religion and almost everything that drives us. Stories at the heart of it. And so why not use it in business? Why not use it in economic development?
Yeah, so while we are on this topic of storytelling, are you writing a novel these days, or you are taking a sabbatical from that?
No, that's something I don't take a sabbatical from. I'm obsessed, and probably it's probably a very terrible financial decision of what to do with my time, but I love writing
Mhm.
novels. So I am working on one, and it will be published in 2026. It's nearly done. So it's always exciting for me to have a project on the go. I work on it in the mornings before I devote myself to my job, whatever that might be. So in this case, working for Brand Tasmania. So I always have this interplay between my work life and my imaginative life, creative life.
Yeah, all right. So we touched a lot about cricket. So I would like to know that do you now have a hang of Aussie sports, especially cricket. Coming from Canada, you might not know a thing about cricket before landing into Australia. So now, do you know what is, I mean, run and the catches and the balls in a cricket or any other sports in Aussie?
Akil, I saw you were going to ask me about this, and so I thought, oh, maybe I should quickly watch a documentary about it. But 5.5 years into living in Australia, I still don't understand cricket, and I barely understand Australian rules football. But I know too that most Australians don't know a thing about ice hockey. So we're on equal ground potentially. But I do intend to fall in love with Australian sport. I have to, and I'm really keen to do it.
Very well. So when you talk about athleticism and fitness, I'm sure that you know that one Titmus has got the most number of gold medals from one state, that is Tasmania. So that fitness element is a part of the Tasmanian story, which you talked about, or which you talked to a number of people, other than meaning over money or that quiet pursuit of the extraordinary. So do you see that fitness element on the top of the list among Tasmanians?
Certainly sports.
Yeah.
It is a big part of Australian life and Tasmanian life, especially for young people. And as Canadians coming in, Canadians too, we care about fitness, but Australians are mad for sports. And so I suppose the nice thing is, as people would tell stories, they would tell the Ricky Ponting story. For example,
Yeah.
they would tell stories of
Yeah.
Ariana Titmus, for example, someone who has overcome something, worked really hard to pursue their passion, and really had to go over all these obstacles in order to create this really special outcome. That story that you often hear in sport aligns really nicely with almost every element of the Tasmanian economy, Tasmanian culture, and the Tasmanian story. So sport and the underdog Cinderella quality of sport really comes into play in Tasmania.
Very nice. So I believe that you built Brand Tasmania from ground up, and this is still a very smart team. So where you are now going to move, I think this is going to be another brand new initiative, and you will be starting from scratch. Is that so? If you could share, only if that is convenient for you.
Oh no, sure. It was a really difficult decision to do something different, and it's only because I'm, in being honest with myself, as you said, I'm working with a team, and actually they're just brilliant women who hardly need me anymore. They hardly ask me things. They know this brand, they know this work so beautifully, so instinctively, and so powerfully, and I'm so proud of them. And so this is, yes, another opportunity in the Gold Coast of Australia, in Queensland. They are sort of where Tasmania was in 2018, where they're ambitious. They'd like to figure it out. They understand, and they really like the model we've been using in Tasmania, and they'd like me to help them apply that model, starting with the interviews, starting with the research and the data, and then really turn that into something that they can run with to unify their cultural expression, build a strategy, and then really build something special toward 2032, which will be a big year for the Gold Coast.
You have truly enriched the Tasmanian story, and to whomsoever I've talked so far, be it Peter Catwine or Kathleen McCann, they have mentioned about yourself, and I clearly see this wide pursuit of the extraordinary everywhere. So thank you very much for your time today and whatever you've done for Brand Tasmania, and I wish you all the best for your future endeavors. This is really kind of you to take time and talk to me. And again, I wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Well, Akil, I've really enjoyed listening to your interviews. I'm so delighted that you're doing this, and I love your passion for Tasmania, and I hope that it just grows over time and that you end up here.
Hopefully very soon. Thank you very much again. So hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.